Hey,
Hey,
turn my.
Bill.
There we go. Let's see here.
I'll give people a couple more minutes to get logged in and then we'll do our check-in.
Get that home and blow it out with air, Tim. I don't get you wash it. Okay.
All right, let's start with our accountability. So we'll go over any contacts you've made, if you've gone on any appointments or written any contracts. And Brendan, you want to get us started?
Yeah, I made a few contacts over the weekend. Uh, I was out doing the DoorDash and I was talking to people and got some people's information. I've been making calls.
Excellent. Taylor, how about you?
Hi, I have my first official client signed on and approved, so that's exciting. We went to one of our showings got canceled, but we went to one. I was gonna ask, is it common for tenants to be at the showings?
It can be, just because nothing says they have to leave, and
Okay.
so we can run into that, yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. It made it a little awkward for my
Yeah,
clients, but but yeah, it went good otherwise.
perfect. Stacy.
I had 2 open houses this weekend. There were just a couple groups the first one and 3 groups at the second. I followed up with the leads, but they all had buyer reps already, agent reps already. So still working through it. Already have 1 open house scheduled for this weekend.
Awesome. Good job. Phoenix.
I'm currently driving to the office if I could be skipped today.
You're in the office?
I'm driving to the office right
Oh,
now, so if
okay.
we could skip me, that'd be great. Thank you.
Joanna.
I'm working with 2 friends. They don't have pre-approval now, and I share some contact with lenders in order to get the approval. Yeah.
Awesome. Q.
Good afternoon. After this morning. My friends are settled pretty nicely, so they're not moving. Obviously, and then I'm gonna have a coffee chat tomorrow morning. And I'm gonna pay a visit to my friend who just had a baby with a gift tomorrow. And then I did some farming today with the design, the flyer I designed a while back. And it turned out to pretty nice. The quality of the paper was pretty nice. It was from Michael Lewis,
Yeah.
and then the quality of the paper was amazing. So I did some walking and then I met people, but there were houses with a lot of stairs, so my knee kind of hurt.
Ouch. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I
Are
did.
you okay with me calling you after class today?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Stephanie.
Everything is going good. I've got a
Perfect.
couple clients that are looking, but yep, just jumping right back into the Ignite when my other job has kind of on hold. So it's gonna let me focus a little bit more with you guys. So
Great. Young, how are you?
I'm good. I'm preparing to buy a house now. I got a pre-approval letter, and I'm preparing to write an offer. Yeah,
Great.
I will. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So I can call you after class today too. So
Oh,
what?
yes, thank you.
Perfect. Oops. Okay. So today for our class, we have Tim English, and Tim was the #1 buyer's agent for Keller Williams Capital City in 2020, and his business has just continued to grow from there. He earned his principal broker license a couple years ago and launched his own team and opened up a mega agent office. So he really has all of the skills to get those buyers, win against anyone else, and lead them through to a successful closing. So definitely make sure to tune in today, engage, ask tons of questions. He's also on our ALC for Capital City. So it's really great to have him here today, and I'll let him take it from there.
All right. Thanks, Maura. Appreciate it. Well, it's great to be with you all today. I love talking about buyers. Buyers are a lot of fun. Started out as a buyer's agent 7 years ago, as Maura said, and really learned from one of the best, Amy McLeod, who has about 30 plus years of experience. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today, I learned from her. And yeah, since I've gone on to do listings and you know, do a greater volume and all that. I still come back to buyers. They're still my favorite. So anyway, if you've got the either electronic or paper form of the excuse me, of the workbook, you can, I would just suggest taking notes on a piece of paper because I'm not going to follow it super closely. Let's just say, all right. So like on page, mine just says 14.3, the 7-step buyer service cycle. That's basically what I'm going to follow. So we're going to talk through all the 7 steps. I'm just not going to really follow their outline beyond that. Okay. So getting started, just know, feel free to raise your hand, you know, either electronically or physically, and let me know if you have a question. I definitely want this to be interactive and not just me talking. So anyway, let's jump in and get started. So the number one thing, obviously, you need leads, right? Like, where do these leads come from? So let's talk about that a little bit. What are some lead sources? Where could we find potential buyers?
Open houses.
Open houses is a great one. Yeah. And open houses are actually becoming more of a focus these days because of the lawsuit last year, and the fact that buyers need to have a representation agreement signed with an agent. Open houses is their one shot to see a house they might be interested in and not have to have something signed previously, right? So that's your shot at getting that buyer who's not signed with somebody and being able to meet them first. Where else are we going to find buyers?
Referrals from your sphere.
Very good. And that's, you know, it's word of mouth, right? So starting with your database and your sphere of people that you already have, obviously they're the number one, and probably number two is referrals from those folks, people that they know. A lot of times as an early agent, you're looking at your database and going, I don't know that many people, and maybe I don't know that many people who are actually thinking about buying or selling. But really, you got to expand your thinking beyond just thinking about who you know and learning how to ask the right questions of your sphere and staying in touch with them, because each of them has a sphere of influence, right, that goes beyond your relationship with them. So who do they know? Who do they know that might want to buy or sell? And even beyond that, just who do they know? Like, if I was talking with you, Taylor, I might, and we were just having a chat over the phone, and it becomes clear you don't really know anybody like right offhand that might be buying or selling a house. What I might ask you is, Taylor, who do you know that I should know? Or who do you know that would be open to just talking with me or being, you know, staying in contact with me? So, you know, maybe you have a friend who's, what do I want to say? Someone who's a real networker, somebody who's like an important person that is like a center of their circle of friends. And that could be a key person to know, to be friends with and add to your database for future reference. So just know that in this, in trying to find clients, really it's about how many new friends can I make, and how fast can I make them? And almost real estate becomes secondary. Like, am I just good at reaching people and establishing rapport with them and getting them to at least like me and trust me enough that I can get their contact information and stay in touch with them, you know, on a quarterly basis. So as long as you're adding more people like that, you're just finding them, whether you're finding them in open houses, whether, you know, you're calling your sphere and finding out who they know, um, you know, belonging to different social organizations, you know, civic service clubs like Rotary or Lions or whatever somebody wants to belong to make a difference in the community. Belong to something like that. Belong to Chamber of Commerce. Could be your church. Could be, you know, I don't know, a PTA. You know, there's so many different groups or things of just natural ways in how we live our lives that we can build relationships with people and get to know new people and just constantly be adding new people to your database that you can talk to and follow up with. Those all become potential leads. I don't know if anyone's shared this with you yet, but I'll give you this ratio, or I'll give you two ratios actually. So when you're calling people out of your sphere, you will find a lead for about every 12 people that you talk to, right? So one lead per 12 contacts. I don't know if you've heard of that ratio before, but if you know, over time, it rings true. It really does. So not 12 calls, right, but 12 actual contacts, conversations where you actually talked about real estate. You'll find one lead. Okay. Now, with people you don't know, all right, so your open houses, online leads, just any, or, you know, cold calls or any way else that you're prospecting through marketing, it's 50 to 1. Okay, 50 to 1. So now, granted, if you're new to an area and you don't know anybody, you might have to go that route. But for those of us that have a significant database, obviously it's going to be a lot less work and you're going to find more leads talking to people that you know. Now, a lot of times that freaks out new agents because they think, oh no, I got to talk to friends and family, and they're going to think that I'm just trying to find a deal. I would say two things. One, you don't have to talk about real estate as the primary reason for the call or the, you know, the conversation. Truly come from a sense of caring about them and asking them questions and finding out what's going on in their life. Don't worry about the real estate. It'll come up. Like they're going to know you're a realtor, or even if they don't, at some point, like if you ask them, you know, how their work is going, what's going on with them and their place of employment, eventually they're going to ask you the same thing, and you can say, hey, I'm a new realtor with Keller Williams. And oh, really? You know, and then they're going to say, so how's the housing market, right? So you're going to get to the real estate conversation. It doesn't have to be the primary thing. Just make it a normal, natural conversation, and don't come from, you know, don't come from this mindset that I'm out to find business. Just come from a standpoint of caring about people, and real estate will take care of itself. I mean, seriously, that's literally what I've done. I just call people. I talk to them about their families and their lives, their work, their, you know, if you know the acronym FORD, but you know, you Ford them. You talk about their family and friends, occupation. What's the R? Recreation and dreams. You know, What are your plans this summer? Or, you know, when it's getting close to Christmas, what are your plans over the Christmas holiday? You know, people talk about their vacations and places that they're going or what they're doing. And so you're just engaging them in conversation. At some point, real estate typically comes up. If for whatever reason it doesn't, you get to the end of your conversation, you just simply bring up, hey, by the way, I was just wondering, do you happen to know of anyone that might be thinking about buying or selling their home in the next 6 to 12 months? So people define leads different ways. For me, I define a lead as someone who's, you know, highly likely to buy or sell in the next 12 months. If they're selling or buying in the next 12 months, I want to know about it. I'm going to stay in touch with them. I'm going to set them up on a follow-up plan and be there when the time is right. So, question so far? So on that, if you're talking to people and you know that you're going to find a lead for every, let me just do some math with you. So a lot of times, here's what I see from new agents. They're kind of scared about making contacts and they don't make enough contacts. They just, oh, I got a few here, I got a couple there. Okay, well, that's nice, but you're trying to start a business. So you got to take big action. You got to take a lot bigger action than just a few contacts here or there. So I don't know if they talk to you about collecting names and you know, contact information and building yourself a database. But for instance, I started with I think it was 179 people in my database. And basically you just use the 5% rule, which just says for every 100 people in your database, there'll be 5 people that will do real estate in any given year, right? So 5, maybe 6, okay? So 5 to 6 out of every 100 that you've got in your database. So that'll give you an idea if you were just trying to count on your database as your only source. That's about how much business you could count on out of your database. So really, like, our number one job is to grow your database. Okay. And when I say grow your database, I don't mean just like buy a bunch of online leads that then flood your database with a bunch of names of people that you don't know, that don't want to answer your call and stuff like that. But keep adding to your database people that you actually meet or talk to that, you know, they're more likely to pick up the phone when you call, and you're more likely to call them because there's somebody that you actually met than somebody that you don't know. So anyway, grow your database, make as many friends as fast as possible, and just know that, you know, you're pretty solid with that 5% rule out of your database. So again, I started with 179 and it's been 7+ years and I'm up to like, I think 832 or something like that. So it's just a matter of just continuing to add people, and then, you know, usually you get to year about 3 and you start getting repeat clients, more people referring business to you because you've like built some momentum, you've done some business, and now it's starting to come back to you. So like now, I mean, yes, I still prospect, but I also get people calling me, right? Because they know me. Hey, I want to sell my house. I know somebody wants to sell their house, or agents calling me to refer, you know, a deal to me. That all comes over time. But at the beginning, you've got to just make a lot of calls and really get out there and grow your database. Okay, so you found a lead. You found a gold nugget. You've been mining and you found this lead. What do we do with it? Right? So you probably heard the term speed to lead, right? You need to so many realtors don't return people's phone calls, they don't follow up, and they lose these leads. So the key is in the follow up, right? That's where the money's at, is in follow up. So you're just following up with that person. You know, usually, like, depends on, let's just say you found this person at an open house. You already know that they're in the market, otherwise they wouldn't come to an open house. But let's just say they don't return your first phone call. You call them on Monday and they don't answer. So what do you do? Anybody got any ideas?
Send them an email.
Okay, you can send them an email. I mean, you know, email, text, phone call, but I would be reaching out to them every day for like 2 weeks. Okay. A lot of times we tell ourselves stories in our heads, oh, they don't want to talk to me. So we quit trying. And really, one, they don't know you very well. Two, they have a busy life. And I don't know, they might be afraid to talk to you. You know, so many, they've maybe had bad experiences with other realtors, or, you know, they just think of you as a salesperson and are afraid that they're going to get their arm twisted. Okay. So you got to be persistent. And just because they don't answer the first, second, third time doesn't mean you give up on them. You know, unless you don't want to get paid. So if you want to get paid, if you want to turn them into a client, you need to think of, you know, initially when you get that initial lead, I would be calling them once a day for at least 2 weeks. And then if I still don't have any answer from them, no, they haven't responded in any way, shape, or form, maybe I go to calling them once or twice a week. And keeping that up for a while. But literally, you just got to keep them in your mix, and it's just a phone call. So, you know, or an email or a text or whatever, just continue to reach out to them. You know, I have literally had buyer leads that I followed up on for like 3 or 4 years that have finally turned into a piece of business. So it's not that you give them a whole lot of time or thought, right? You don't want to waste your energy on people that aren't ready, but you also want to let them know that you're there. So you just keep following up. So persistence is kind of the key. And so you just have to get past whatever story you're telling yourself in your head. A lot of people think that I'm bothering somebody. Hey, they don't want to talk to me. They must not want to buy. So we make up all these stories because we're just hearing silence. We don't really know what there's. So try to stay neutral. Try to not listen to those stories. And just stay neutral, like have no feelings about it whatsoever. It's just a phone call. It's a potential piece of business. I'm just going to keep following up with this person. Okay, so we have a lead. We're talking to that lead, and what kind of questions do we need to find out from that lead to find out whether or not they're a real buyer?
If they've been pre-approved.
Okay. Very good. What else?
I think I need to make some communication with prospect buyer to understand their real motivation.
Okay, very good. We want to find out their motivation. Absolutely. Yep. Find out, hey, do they need to buy right now? You know, do they have a timeline? Are they buying 6 months from now? If so, why? course, we don't ask them why, so jot this down. Do not ask any why questions. Okay? It puts people on the defensive. So rephrase the question and turn it into a what or a how question, not a why question. So if somebody told me, yeah, I'm thinking about buying later this year, you know, or hey, I'm thinking about buying this summer or this fall. So what about this summer? You know, what about buying this summer is important to you? So now it sounds like I'm just coming from curiosity and just instead of saying, why are you buying this summer? It just comes across totally differently. So turn it into a what question. But yeah, we want to find out their motivation. Another great question to find out somebody's motivation is to give them the 1 to 10 scale. You know, so if I was to ask you, you know, to rate yourself on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being I need to buy right now, and 1, you know, I'm like just a tiny bit interested in buying a home. Where would you put yourself on the scale? So most of the time people put themselves, you know, in that 5 to 7, maybe 8 range. Okay, so they'll give you a number somewhere in the middle. And so then you ask them, okay, so fair enough. What would make it change to a 10? That's your follow-up question. What would make it change? What would make you a 10? What would have to happen to make you a 10? You know, and that's going to be your key right there. That's going to get down beyond the surface level and help you identify what their true motivation is. So that's a real helpful question and follow-up question to ask to find out motivation. All right, so we're going to find out motivation. We're going to find out if they're pre-approved. What else do we want to find out?
If they're working with an agent already.
Okay, very good. Yes. Yes, we want to find out if they already engaged an agent, and if so, have they actually done paperwork? 9 times out of 10, they haven't done paperwork. So they might tell you that they have an agent to kind of push you off. But just ask the follow-up question of, hey, have you, you know, maybe they just had a phone call or met this agent at an open house or what have you. Or what we're seeing today is, okay, maybe they met the agent at an open house and then they wanted they called that agent back to show them another property. And then that agent signed a, you know, a temporary representation agreement that was only good for that day or that week or that property. And so essentially they're still unsigned. They're not really bound by any agreement. So make sure you've asked follow-up questions on that as well. All right, so we find out if they're working with an agent. You know, the thing that's going to get them talking is asking about the kind of house or the kind of property they're interested in. So, you know, ask them about that. Find out what is it that they're looking for. And their location, right? Where are they looking? Where are they hoping to move to? So once we find those things out, we're pre-qualifying, if you will, right? We're pre-qualifying this buyer. We're finding out how serious they are and whether or not they're ready. So I think the homework talks about an A buyer versus a B or a C buyer. I I use the acronym RAW, RAW, which just means, do you have a ready, able, and willing buyer? Are they ready? Meaning, are they, the main factor is, are they pre-approved, right? But maybe it's a person, the other thing you're gonna wanna find out from this buyer is, do they need to sell? Do they need to sell first, right? Do they have a home they need to sell? Or if they are renting, when is their lease up? Are they month to month? Or are they still in an annual, lease where it's going to cost them to break the lease? So those are all things you want to try and find out as you're having conversations with people, and find out if they're ready. And then able, they can talk about wanting to buy a certain property, but from your knowledge of the market, you're going to know about how much money they need to be, the price point that they're going to need to be pre-approved at in order to buy the kind of house that they're talking about. So are they really able, or maybe they're pre-approved for a certain amount, but then you find out that they don't, hardly, they don't have the cash to really, you're going to have to ask for closing costs, or they don't really have enough for a down payment or whatever. So you're going to have to, one way that I've found to ask about the finances as I'm meeting with somebody in a consultation, once we find out how much they're pre-approved for, I just ask them how much cash they would have available for their down payment and closing costs. It's kind of a non-threatening, instead of saying, well, how much money do you have? So what cash do you have available to work with to apply towards down payment or closing costs? A lot of times people don't understand closing costs, so you might have to explain what are closing costs. So you might need to read it and study up on that. It's just a conglomeration of costs associated with closing. So everything from collecting property taxes, collecting the homeowner's insurance, collecting a certain amount of that money up front is the bulk of your closing costs. But you also have title and escrow fees. You have your mortgage origination fee. So all those get wrapped up into closing costs. Closing costs tend to run, like if you just want a general rule of thumb, they tend to run between 2.5% to 3% of the purchase price. So you can kind of roughly use that as a gauge to help somebody know about how much money they might need to have for closing costs on a property. Okay, so you've got this lead, you've asked them some pre-qualifying questions, and we've determined that they're, a ready, able, well, so I said ready, able. Okay, the third one's willing. Like they could be ready and able, but they could be like not very cooperative or stubborn, or think that they're in a buyer's market when they're in a seller's market. And you could go out there going, hey, I'm going to help them buy a house, and they just aren't motivated to do what they need to do in order to get a house. So you kind of have to be a little bit educated in sales psychology and understanding how to work with people and move them, help them adjust their expectations to successfully bring these two sides together and put a deal together. So You have to think about, is this person willing? So anyway, let's say you found this lead, you've asked them all these questions, you think they're a real buyer, and now we need to close for a consultation. Let me just give you some verbiage that you can use to close for an appointment. All right, so if I was talking to somebody and I asked them a few questions and I'm finding out, yeah, hey, sounds like they're ready to buy, then I would just say something like this. So you want to come across as the expert. All right. So you're the doctor with the diagnosis. Does that make sense? So you've asked these questions, and just kind of like a doctor or a nurse asks the patient questions to find out, to be able to properly diagnose the situation, right? So you've asked them these bunches of questions. Now you get to make the diagnosis. You can say, so here's what I recommend we do. See that? You're culminating the whole conversation. You've had this conversation. Now you recognize it's kind of coming to a close. And so here's what I recommend we do. Let's find a time to get together so that I can go over the home buying process with you and share with you updated, up-to-date market information so you can make the best decision possible for your family. Okay, so you're saying, hey, it's going to be valuable to meet with me because I'm going to share with you this important information, because everybody wants to look smart and be right, right? So you're giving them that opportunity. You're coming from a place of value, saying, hey, I know how to get you there. This goal that you have of buying a house and what you've asked for, here's what I recommend we do. I'm the trusted expert, right? Essentially is what you're saying. So here's what I recommend we do. Let's find a time to get together. That way I can go over the home buying process and share with you up-to-date market information. That way you'll be armed with the best information so you can make the best decision possible for your family. How does that sound? And they'll, use that follow-up question. They're going, oh, that sounds great. All right, so then you give them two options. You don't say, hey, my calendar's wide open because I don't have any clients, right? You don't say that. You just say, I would be available this, I'm available. Try and make it as quick as possible, right? Don't make them wait a whole week on your schedule, at least. Hey, I'm available tomorrow at 4 or Wednesday at 5. Just give them two options. Like I said, your calendar could be wide open, but just give them two options. It's easier. It's just easier that way. So even if they come back and say neither of those times work, then you say, oh, let me look at my calendar again. And you give them one or two more options and say, well, how about this time or this time? So anyhow, it just helps you close for the appointment. Sometimes we get a little freaked out about asking people to meet with us. But if you'll just memorize that line, just basically memorize that little dialogue piece. And really, I mean, practice it with somebody, practice it with your partner or some other family member, and even have the family member like say, hell no, I don't want to meet with you, right? That something like that. Even be gruff and say, oh, so it sounds. So here's what I recommend we do. Why don't we find a time to meet together? You just got to get used to it coming off your tongue, regardless of what the other person says. Regardless of what the other person says, you're going to say, so here's what I recommend we do. Let's find a time to meet together so I can go over the home buying process and share with you the up-to-date market information. We'll look at some homes. And so anyway, you got the script there. That's basically a little dialogue that I learned to just close for an appointment. So you get the appointment, you got it on your calendar. How are we prepping for this appointment? Now, your homework kind of makes a big deal out of a home buyer's guide. Maybe that's something that you put together down the road, but I will tell you that after 7.5 years of real estate, I still don't have a buyer's guide. And I don't think that I've lost any business because I didn't have a buyer's guide. Okay. So as long as you're communicating and helping them understand the home buying process, sure, a buyer's guide could be a helpful reference tool or something that you get out to potential clients or whatnot that looks slick and fancy or whatever. But I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time and money on something like that. I don't put a whole lot of stock in it, to be honest with you. So what I would be doing to prep for a buyer's consultation, there's probably 3 things. One, you need to have some sort of worksheet or form that has the questions that you're going to ask them about the kind of property that they're interested in. Okay. So yeah, you asked them a few questions already, but you didn't ask them enough questions, right? Like you're not going to be able to do a full detailed analysis of their situation. So some of those questions are in your guide. Let's see if I can find that page. I mean, there's some questions on 14.9, quick questions that they would want you to include in the home buyer's guide. But I think, oh, here we go. Buyer needs analysis on 14.11. Give you some, give you an idea of what kind of questions. I think there's even something on the Keller Williams intranet website. I know I downloaded something that Gary Keller put together that I kind of adapted for myself. But anyway, you need a set of questions so that you're not just having to try and think of them all yourself, because you'll forget to ask stuff. So I have a set of questions that you're going to work through. Obviously, you need to have the paperwork drawn up either physically or electronically, have some of the basic stuff filled out so that you're not having to do that during the consultation. We can talk more about that later on here in the process. And then you need to do some market analysis. Okay, so you're gonna, from what you know about what this buyer is interested in, you may or may not know, right? You may have just briefly talked to somebody, not really known a whole lot, been able to set an appointment, and you're going to find out at the appointment. But if you know something ahead of time, what they're looking for, don't go in blind to the appointment, and go ahead and look on the MLS for what they're looking for and see what kind of inventory is there, how many homes actually fit the description of what they're looking for, or in the location that they're looking for, and then the price point that they're looking for. Are we talking about 2 or 3 homes or 20 or 30 homes, right? Like how many homes actually fit what they're, is there anything out there that actually fits what they're looking for? Okay. So you kind of want to look and get a feel for that before you have this consultation. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
If I cannot find any home that is matched to the client criteria, what do you normally do? Just keep an eye on it, or just wait until it come up, or What would you normally do?
Say that one more time.
Like my client looking for the brand new house
Okay.
that do not have HOA and have more space, like more private space, but in the certain location. But when I look at into MLS, there is nothing in the market, nothing in the inventory for whatever they are looking for.
Uh-huh.
And what would you do normally if
Yeah.
you cannot find anything that they
That fits.
are looking for?
So, right. Very good question. So I do two things. One, I make sure that I communicated with them. I mean, in actuality, there's a potential, because we have had a lack of inventory, right? There's the potential that it could just be the market and that we could just be waiting for something to pop up. But more likely than not, sometimes what we find is that buyers have a picture of the perfect home and it doesn't exist. Meaning, maybe it exists, but it exists in a different location or at a different price point than where we're looking. So as a part of my consultation with my client, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to warn them about this trap that buyers sometimes fall into, of chasing this mirage of the perfect house. Or I might not put it that way. Sometimes in the consultation, I'll just basically say, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to go on this home tour. And you've seen all of the inventory. You've seen everything that's available for the kind of house that you're looking for at the price point and at the location that you're looking for. If we don't find it, right, then I'm going to come back and ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, what about the home search do you want to change? Because continuing to do the same thing over and over again, but not finding the house is kind of the definition of insanity, right? Expecting different results. So it's just, you have to use the right analogy, but for me, I use hunting. And if I'm going out to try and find this particular game that I'm hunting for, and we're going to the same place at the same time, using the same strategies, and we're not finding the game, then that would just be crazy if we just kept repeating that over and over again. We need to change locations, we need to change times, we need to change strategies, right? So I just ask them, I just say, hey, in this real estate game, if you will, there's only three things we can change. We can change the location, we can change the price point, or we can change our expectations around the kind of house that we are looking for. Which one of those would you like to change? So that just tells them, hey, when we go out to look at homes and we're going to do this home tour, I'm not twisting your arm to get you to buy a house you don't want to buy. On the other hand, I'm also not going to let you drag me around and show house after house after house for months or a year on end and not find anything. That would be kind of malpractice on my part, and a big waste of time for both of us if I didn't lead you through this process. And so I'm just sharing with them, hey, I'm leading you firmly but gently through this process of finding this home. And I don't want you to fall in this trap of trying to chase the perfect home. So if we're not finding what we're looking for, then I'm going to come back and ask you, what would you like to change about your search? So then they tell me, oh, well, we said we needed 4 bedrooms, but really the 4th bedroom is an office. And so maybe we could convert some of the garage space, or maybe we could find a house, You see what I'm saying? Then they start getting creative. They start getting creative. Instead of me telling them what to do, they start getting creative about how to solve their own problem. And 9 times out of 10, they're usually adjusting their expectations around the house that they said they wanted to buy. Because most of the time, they can't change the price point, right? They're only pre-approved for so much. And most of the time, they don't want to change the location or locations. Although sometimes I've brainstormed with people. They've told me they wanted to be in this neighborhood or this town, and we're not finding it. And I've just suggested, I said, have you thought about this town or this neighborhood? Because I've done some searching of my own and I find what they're looking for and I find it in another location. Would you be open to that? And they go, oh, I never thought about that. Right? So then they start thinking outside the box a little bit, and maybe we find them something that they wouldn't have thought of before if we just kept trying to find it in the same town. So usually try and look at other locations. And then ultimately they may have to adjust their expectations of what kind of house that they're looking for. Obviously, the only other option is to wait, right? The only other option is to have them on a search, a property search, and to wait for the right house to pop up. And sometimes that's what we've had to do in the past 2 to 3 years with not a lot of inventory. Sometimes we have just had to wait for a little while. It depends on how unique or specific of a property that they're looking for, right? Like if they're looking for an acreage that has certain amenities or whatever, maybe we do have to wait because there aren't that many to choose from. But otherwise, I would just kind of challenge them a little bit about what they might want to change about their search. Okay, so we're preparing for the buyer consultation. The day comes. Oh, before we get, the other thing you do to prepare for the buyer consultation is you confirm the appointment with the buyer. So the day before or the morning of, send them a text. Just wanted to check in with you, make sure we're still good to go to meet at 4 p.m. tomorrow at the Market Center or wherever it is that you're going to be meeting with them with. Let me encourage you to meet them at your market center, whatever market center you're going to be a part of. I'm not saying you can't meet them at a coffee shop or someplace, but a market center is going to give you a much more professional feeling. You want them to listen to you and take you seriously. And if you come off too informal and too just friendly, then they see you as somebody who's just going to do their bidding, and you lose the edge of being able to be the expert who's going to lead them through the process. So there's some psychology to them coming to you on your turf at the market center, right? They're coming to a professional appointment like they would with their CPA, right? Their financial planner, their lawyer, whoever else, right? So use that to your advantage, look professional, meet at the market center. And I think that you'll find that it just adds to their to their concept of how they view you and how you guys are going to relate. Okay, so the buyer consultation comes. Here's what I do. So they come in, you have a conference room all set up, ready to go. Maybe you got a couple of bottles of water there, or you ask them if they want coffee. you know, whatever's available there at your market center. I just, you know, I will have the room set up to, you know, definitely where I'm going to sit and where the, you know, the big screen is of where we're going to look at properties and whatnot. And then I'll just kind of motion to where I would like for them to sit. Again, that's a psychological thing of you being in charge of the meeting. So just kind of motion for where you want them to sit down, make a little bit of small talk, getting to know them just a little bit, and then just to set up the meeting so that this will put people at ease. People are more at ease when they know what the meeting is going to be about. And so they can follow along and know where they're at in the meeting. Because if you just talk and talk and talk, you know, or you just let them talk and talk and talk, then it's like you lose momentum, you lose direction, and then the meeting's not as effective. So what I do is I just set them up at the very beginning. I say, so, you know, thanks for coming in today, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. I've got 3 goals today for our meeting. You know, so then I go tell them what the 3 goals are. So I've got 3 goals today for our meeting. Number 1, I want to get to know you better. So I've got some questions I want to ask you here to know exactly what you're looking for. What are your goals? And secondly, we're going to go over what's going on in the housing market, or so you can know what to expect when you get out there and are looking at homes. And so part of that second goal is I'm going to give them market data. I'm going to tell them a little bit about myself and how I go about showing homes, how I go about saving my clients money and getting them the best deal in the least amount of time, what they can expect from me, right? So I'm going to kind of set expectations around what does it look like to do business with me, and what does it look like to do business in this housing market, right? So that's number 2. So I'm going to get to know them. I'm going to help them get to know me and get to know the housing market, right? And then number 3, if we think that we're a good fit for each other. Now, notice I didn't say if you want to do business with me. I don't just put it all on them, because I'm interviewing them too. Could be that they're a super big jerk and I don't want to do business with them, right? Or it could be they're not actually prepared or don't really have the funds, you know, or they're not realistic about what they're searching for. And I know I can't find that for them. So I'll just say, I'm sorry, that's not going to work. So anyway, I always say if we feel like we're a good fit for each other, so that they kind of get a clue that I'm interviewing them too. Like, I have a choice in this. I don't have to take you on as a client, right? So anyway, just to recap, buyer consultation. We've got 3 goals for our meeting today. Number 1, I want to get to know you, your dreams, your goals. Number 2, I'm going to share with you about how I save my clients the most amount of money and help them get a house in the shortest amount of time. We're going to go over the market data, the home buying process, what you can expect from me. And number 3, if we feel like we're a good fit for each other, then we'll do we'll fill out some paperwork that's required by my brokerage, and we'll do a property search and see what homes are out there that fit your guys' criteria. How does that sound? And they're like, oh, that sounds great. Okay, so then I get moving through that process. So number 1, I bring out my questionnaire sheet and I just follow the questionnaire sheet, right? Make sure that I get their phone number and email if I don't already have everybody's phone number and email. One of the keys to a successful meeting is making sure that all the decision makers are present in the meeting. So you don't want to meet with a husband or a wife and not with the other person there. Just don't do it. It'll be a waste of your time. Okay. You'll essentially have to have the meeting a second time for the other person. Or if the other person just starts going to the showings, they don't have all the information that the other spouse had, okay, or the other partner had. So the other piece you'll find is, specifically if you're working with a young couple who's a first-time home buyer, you really need to find out whether or not mom and or dad are going to be involved. They might say that they're the only decision makers, but is mom and or dad going on the showings with you? If they say yes, mom and dad need to be in the buyer's consultation too. Does that make sense? Because otherwise you're going to have explained everything to this young couple, and then they're going to take mom and dad on the home tour, and dad's going to think that he's doing a great job watching out for his son or daughter and finding out everything that's wrong with the house and convincing them not to buy it. Okay. So mom and dad need to be brought along in the process too, so they know who you are, what you're about, what the process is, because they probably haven't bought a home for 20 years, right? And they're still thinking it's a buyer's market when it's a seller's market. So make sure you have everybody in the consultation that needs to be there. Just, yeah. And don't make exceptions. It really doesn't matter. Just say, I'm sorry. I've just found this to not be a best practice. It doesn't work super well. So let's just go ahead and reschedule and find a time when both of you could be in the appointment, or whatever. All right. So you got everybody there. You've asked all the questions. Then you start into talking about your value proposition, what you bring to the table, how you're going to help them. Let me give you a few pointers that I learned from my mentor that will save you a ton of time and help you close more houses. Okay, you ready for this? All right, so what I'll do in the consultation, well, here's a general rule of thumb. The better work you do in the consultation, the more questions you ask, the more you find out about exactly what they're looking for, and the better job that you do diagnosing their situation and knowing what kind of strategy you need to use in order to get them a home. The less homes you're going to have to show and the shorter amount of time it's going to take for you to get to them putting in an offer. Okay, so do your homework, do a good job in the consultation. It will save you tons of time in the field. And what I mean by that is, again, you're asking them questions and they say they want a good sized backyard. Well, what does that mean? What are they going to use the yard for? Is it for the kids? Is it for the dogs? Is it for entertaining? Is it for a garden? What's it for? Right? So you got to dig deeper on when they give you answers to certain things about the home. Make sure you have follow-up questions in mind so you can find exactly what it is that they're really looking for. Number one, okay? And then number two, in the second section where you're telling them about yourself, here's what I share with them. All right, and this is a game changer. Okay, this method and this script, if you will, made it so, I kid you not, I would go out with buyers, and about 70% of the time, I would be showing them like 5 houses, And 70% of the time, we would be writing an offer on the first time out. Okay, so no multiple home tours week after week after week, showing them a bazillion homes. It was, we did the work in the consultation. I set the expectations. We looked at all the properties on the screen. We narrowed it down to the 5 homes that they wanted to go see. We went out the next day or the day after. We went and saw them. And out of those, they picked one. We wrote an offer. We got them under contract. That happened about 70% of the time. So what I'm about to share with you is gold, okay? It will help you a ton. So what we call what this was called, or let me turn my heater down here. All right, so what this was called is, we called this the ophthalmologist method. Okay, so don't ask me to spell ophthalmologist, but it's the eye doctor, right? So most people have gone to see an eye doctor. And even if they haven't, they can still follow this analogy. So somewhere in your presentation there, under point number 2, you're going to go into the spiel where you basically say, so what I found is that when we go look at homes, I'm not really here to sell you a house. I'm not really here. You're not going to find that I'm going to twist your arm and try and convince you to buy a house. Here's what I am going to do, right? So what I do is I'm trying to help them know how to relate to me, right? Because otherwise it's kind of adversarial. They're like, they don't want to open up and share information with you because they think you're going to use it against them to try and convince them to buy a house like a traditional salesperson, okay? So what you're trying to help them see is that you're a trusted advisor. My job's not to really find you a house, and my job is not to sell you a house. My job is to advise you and then to negotiate on your behalf. And protect you. Okay, those are my 3 jobs: negotiate, advise, and protect. So that's what I tell them. My job, that's my job description. So then I get to the ophthalmologist. So what I do is, in coming alongside of you as a trusted advisor, I use what I call the ophthalmologist method. Now, have you been to the eye doctor? And most people will say yes. Okay, so when you've been to the eye doctor, they put the lenses in front of your eyes and they say 1 or 2. 1 or 2, right? They change the lenses. And then you pick which one helps you see better, right? Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at all the homes that are available. That's the beauty of the internet, right? We can see all the homes that are available in your price point, in your location, and with the amenities that you're looking for. So here in a little bit, what we're going to do is we'll do that property search and we'll narrow it down to the ones that you're most serious about. And so let's just say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, that we narrow it down to 5 homes. And so we head out, here in the next day or 2, and we go look at these 5 homes. Here's what you'll hear me say. We'll go into house number 1. We'll look at house number 1. And then after looking at house number 1, we'll kind of convene back in the living room. And I'll just say, what did you like about the home? And we'll talk about whatever. Hey, I love the kitchen, or I love the backyard, or whatever it was he liked about the house. And then we'll go on to house number 2, and we'll do the same thing. And then after we get done with house number 2, you're just going to simply hear me say, if you could only choose between these 2 houses, which one would you choose? House number 1 or house number 2? And then I explain to them why. I just say, because what we know is that a confused mind can't make a decision. And so by just making these little micro decisions as we go through each home, then now let's just say you chose house number 1. You said, yeah, house number 1's better than house number 2. Well, then we don't have to remember house number 2 anymore. It doesn't have to take up any brain space, right? So we, instead of, if we didn't make any decision, we got through all 5 houses, then you're going to go, now which house was it that had that bathroom? And you're going to start to confuse features and maybe even remember not quite correctly. So it's easier if we just go from house to house, and as we're already there in the moment, you're going to say, whether you like this house or not, right? And then we're going to weigh it against our other options so that you're only just keeping the best house in mind. So we'll get to house number 5 and it'll be the same thing. Whichever one was your favorite house, let's say it was house number 3, and now we're in house number 5. Which one of those is the best option for your family? So you're going to go through and talk and, consider all the different factors about the property, and then which one you think is the best option out of all the homes that we've seen. You got to make sure and emphasize that they've seen everything. There aren't any hidden houses hiding in the bushes. They've seen everything that's available, either on the screen or now that we've seen these few houses in person, we've seen everything that's available. And so for the amount of money that you have to work with, this is the best option for your family. Then you'll hear me say, is there any reason why we can't do some paperwork? So it's a non-threatening way to ask about putting in an offer. Okay. Is there any reason why we can't do some paperwork? So I get through that whole spiel and I've shared with them the method and what they're going to hear me say when we actually get out there and do it. All right. Then I tell them, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, would it surprise you to hear that over 50% of my buyers end up putting an offer in on a house on their first time out? And they'll say, oh, yeah, that is kind of surprising. And I just say, so I just want to let you know that, again, I'm not twisting your arm. I'm just presenting a very straightforward and simple method that takes all the guesswork out of it, makes it very simple so it saves you time, which saves you money. All right. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, again, I'm not going to twist your arm. And if we get out there and you don't like any of the homes, that's totally okay. Totally okay. However, what I'll do then is we'll regroup and say, out of the 3 things, right? We don't want to go back out and use the same search and expect to get different results than what we just got. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you want to change location? Do you want to change price point? Or do you want to change your expectations around the kind of property that you're looking for? And then they tell me what they want to change about their search. And then I say, okay, totally cool. We'll change this about your search. I'll call you back on, next Thursday or whatever it is. And we'll identify the properties that you want to go see on Friday or Saturday. And we'll do a new search, right? That's totally fine. I'm okay with that. As long as they understand that we're changing something about the search so that we can find what they're looking for. But what you'll find is if you'll use that method, and then when you get out in the field, you just follow through and do what you said you were going to do, they're going to trust you. Like you're doing what you said you were going to do. It's a very straightforward process. You've taken away all the pressure, because you already told them they don't have to buy a house, but you've also set the expectation that they could buy the house if they wanted to, right? So it works amazing. It works absolutely amazing. Most people will go ahead, most people will understand that they've seen everything, that they might as well put in an offer, and then you'll build trust with them because you followed through and did what you said you were going to do. So yeah, that's what I do that's what I do in the buyer consultation. All right. So once I get through all of that, just say, so do you want to proceed forward? You know, however you want to ask that. Most of the time they say yes, vast majority of the time. I think my success rate on buyer consultations is something like 95% or something. Most people that, you know, if I get them to in a consultation, they're signing up to be my buyers. So we get to that point. I walk them through the paperwork. I tell them what I work for. You know, I don't know if you had these conversations or understand the, you know, all the changes that came about because of the lawsuit last year, but I just tell my buyers, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I work for 2.5%. And here's how the industry used to operate. Here's how the industry operates today. There's a small chance that you might have to pay part or all of that 2.5%. It's very, 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 very small chance. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to ask for the seller to pay the 2.5%. We're just going to, we don't know what they're going to be willing to pay, but I know enough to know that 90 out of 100 sellers are just going to go ahead and pay the buyer agent commission because they want to sell the house. I mean, what are they going to say? No. I mean, it's kind of silly. So make sure you're practicing your dialogue, how you're going to explain that to your buyer in a way that's honest, but yet doesn't freak them out. Okay. So, you know, I explain it to them and I'm honest with them. At the same time, I also know from experience, you know, there's a very, very small chance that you're actually going to have to pay anything. We're going to negotiate this and it's going to be a part of the deal. The way real estate operates really, in a sense, hasn't changed. The seller's still paying for both realtors. We just have to do it this way because of the lawsuit. So, yeah. So anyway, that's the way I explain it. Any questions around that, or I don't know what you guys have heard or what you know already. So let's just stop for a second. Let me know if you have any questions around the lawsuit or how to explain commissions. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, hearing none, I will assume that you guys have been.
Actually, I do have a question. I thought it was sometimes the seller, or is it always the buyer that covers the closing costs? I thought sometimes it was the seller as well.
Gotcha. Sometimes it is. I would just say that well, it just depends on the market, right? So like you kind of have to gauge. There's a bunch of different factors you have to gauge. So like it could just be like if there's if it's a tight market and there's not very many homes for sale and it's really a seller's market, then buyers don't really have the leverage to ask for closing costs. Does that make sense? So you kind of have to.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, when I go into it, I'm thinking about the market itself in general. Have I been getting closing costs for my clients, or other people getting closing costs for their clients, or is it a strong enough market where that's just not really a thing that we're going to be able to ask if we want to get a home? And of lately, that's kind of where it's been, is like, we're probably not going to get closing costs. So that's one of those things that you want to understand about your market. And maybe as a part of the consultation, you're looking at some of the market reports and saying, okay, there's currently in this zip code that you're looking in, there's only 2 months worth of inventory And it's kind of a tight market, which means it's a seller's market. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer probably not going to be able to ask for closing costs. So again, I'm trying to interpret the data when we go through the data, so let me just back up. So do you guys understand months of inventory? Okay. Do you know what constitutes a seller's market versus a buyer's market? Okay, so I see some heads. So just real quick, 0 to 3 months of inventory is a seller's market. 3 to 6 months is a neutral market. Anything over 6 is a buyer's market. So where we've been is basically a seller's market. And in some zip codes, at some times, we've been bumping into a neutral market where there's some give and take, where buyers have been able to ask for more repairs, or maybe they've been able to ask for some closing costs. Kind of saw some of that this winter and last fall, as more inventory came on, but yet the higher interest rates kept fewer buyers from buying. So there ended up being more inventory to choose from, and it was harder for sellers to get their homes sold. So some of them had to be willing to pay some closing costs some of the time. So then, a lot of it just has to do with the inventory. And then beyond that, part of it has to do with thinking about the situation itself. Like, what situation is the seller in, right? I mean, the agent's not necessarily going to give away all that information, but sometimes you can kind of tell what kind of situation it is and maybe how long it's been on the market or something like that, to where you can kind of gauge whether or not how motivated this seller is to sell and whether or not you could ask for closing costs. So you just have to kind of figure those things out on a case-by-case basis. But as a general rule of thumb, we're kind of in a market where, especially since the way it's packaged now, like, the seller's going to see this offer that's already going to ask for them to pay 2.5%, or 3% for a buyer's agent commission. So you tack on another 2.5% in closing costs, and they kind of go, "Oh my goodness, that looks like a lot of money." Whereas before, they didn't really see the buyer agent commission because they already negotiated with their listing agent at 5 or 6% up front, and they already understood that that's what they were going to pay. So then when somebody asked for closing costs, it didn't seem like as big of a deal. But now that closing costs are in as a part of the offer, they're seeing both of those things kind of side by side and kind of choking on the amount of money that they're being asked to pay. So they're kind of going back and going, "Okay, well, fine, we'll pay the agent, but we don't want to pay the closing costs." So that's kind of what I'm seeing anyway. So yeah, you've got to have a clear value proposition and believe in who you are and what you're doing and what your services are and why you're saying, "Hey, I work for X," whatever that number is. Okay. And like I said, don't be afraid of that, because 99 times out of 100, the seller's still going to pay your fee. So yeah, again, don't be afraid of that. Don't let that make you have some fear around talking about that with a buyer, because reality is buyers most likely not going to have to pay any of your commission, but you do need to still follow the law and explain to them that technically they would be responsible for this amount if perchance the seller is not willing to pay all or some of this commission. So that's basically the talk around commission. So you get through all of that. They sign the paperwork with you. we're ready to go and find a home. Okay, so in finding a home, again, I would recommend not showing them any more than 5 or 6 homes. If you got to show more than 5 or 6 homes, you haven't done your homework in the consultation. Like, you're already seeing the home on the screen, right? Ask them more questions, and get more specific, or help them get more specific. Every once in a while, you'll find a buyer who's not super specific on what they want, and you're just going to have to help them and coach them. Otherwise, you're going to be showing them way too many homes. So do more work in the consultation so that you save gas and time out in the field. So that's just kind of a general rule of thumb. What I do is, we'll have the list of homes that comes up based on their criteria. We'll look through all the pictures. I just let them know. I say, hey, if this isn't a location where you want to be, if the outside of the house you think is ugly, don't make me scroll through all the pictures of the house. Like, just tell me, no, you don't want to see that house, right? So then we'll go to the next house. If I don't hear anything, I'm going to start scrolling through the pictures for you, right? And you're just going to tell me no or maybe, no or maybe. And I just create what I call the maybe list. So we get through all of them, and I've checked however many from the list. And then we, get rid of all the other homes and nail it down to, oh, we've checked 4 homes. And so when would you like to go see those homes? And then we set a time. And then, immediately afterwards, I'm printing off the listing sheets, and I'm calling the agents, and I'm arranging the tour in a geographically, whatever makes sense geographically or whatever for a tour route. And then I'm letting my clients know I'm going to meet you at 123 Main Street Friday at 3 p.m. They know where to show up, and then we go see the rest of the homes. Yeah.
Are you doing this search with them on the MLS or?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a feature where you can favorite or check homes.
Yeah. So, in what market center are you with, Taylor?
Eugene Springfield.
Yeah. So, what's your MLS down there?
RMLS.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a member of RMLS too. I don't do a lot of work with that, so I don't know quite the best way to tell you to do that on RMLS, but on Willamette Valley MLS, basically I go in and build the search. Like, they tell me their criteria, I put it all in and click search, and it's just going to come up with a big long list. And then we just start going down the list and finding the ones that they want to actually go see. And then from the ones that they pick, I just print them out. And I'm generally familiar with the addresses, or I look them up and see what part of town they're in, and then make a route that makes sense to go see those homes. Or there's some of the times, maybe a property is tenant occupied and you got to give them 24-hour notice. Or obviously homes that are vacant are much easier to be flexible on when you see them versus owner occupied. So, sometimes you adjust for factors like that. But, and then if you're just going around town, generally you're going to give yourself, normally people can see a house in like 15 to 20 minutes. And then, leaving yourself enough drive time to the next house. So if you're just going around, say Eugene, you could probably book house every 30 minutes on 30-minute increments. If you're showing acreages or something like that, then maybe it's every one an hour. But usually you could get in two an hour, depending on how much drive time you have. Yeah. So then, the other thing that, you know, and this is a kind of a personal thing, and you'll just have to decide how you want to handle this. For me, I'm a family guy, and I don't want to be out evenings and weekends. Okay. So part of my spiel is, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, everybody else is out looking at homes evenings and weekends. If you'd like to beat your competition to the houses that you like, why not block out some time like on a Friday afternoon or whatever, you know. A lot of people today don't have, you know, the traditional 9 to 5 work schedule anyways, or they work remote and they have more flexibility as to when they work or what have you. So, you know, you just help them prioritize it and be able to, you know, they take time off of work to go to the dentist or the doctor. I mean, this is a huge decision. Why wouldn't they take some time off to buy a house? So I don't tell them that they have to do that. I just show them why it could be advantageous to them to beat their competition to the same listings, and we could get out there sooner and potentially find their house and put in an offer before the competition does. And that way I'm protecting my time with my family and I'm not running myself ragged. So that's another thing to think of when it comes to deciding how you want to run your business. Okay, putting in the offer and negotiating the contract. What do I want to say here? Again, do your homework in the consultation. Show your clients the market reports that will show them what houses are going for. So I will let my people know, hey, in this zip code and in this price range, homes are going for 99% of purchase price. Okay. And then, oh, and we're looking in this zip code over here. Okay, so in the, you know, 500 to 550 price range, homes are going for 98.6% of purchase price. So by sharing that information with them, one, you're the expert. Two, you're setting expectations around what kind of offer is going to get across the finish line when they find a house. You know, we go look at a house that's $500,000, but then they go, oh, I only want to offer 450. So I would say, well, you know, we can do that. And I'm just letting you know up front, probably not going to get accepted. Right? So again, I've already shared with them the information. I don't have to get into an argument with them. I'm still going to do what they asked me to do. Sometimes people are stubborn and you'll have to go through, you know, getting an offer rejected and for them to kind of skin their knees a little bit. But pretty soon they'll start listening to you if you're giving them accurate information and they go, oh yeah, okay, that didn't work. But you just tell them up front and that it gets their mind to thinking. It helps adjust they know then kind of what the norm is, right? So that way they see that purchase price. Then obviously as a buyer's agent, you still need to do, I mean, it's not like you have to do a full-blown CMA, but you still need to, if we're seeing a house and it's been on the market 90 some days, it's overpriced. So how much is it overpriced? Right? Don't know unless you run some comps. So let me give you some parameters as to how to run comps. All right, this will be really handy for your clients, and again, will make you look like the expert. Okay, so here's the parameters that appraisers use to run comps. All right, so besides putting in, let's say you're looking at a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So you're gonna put in 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Look at the age of the house. Like, let's say it was built in 1975. You're gonna go 5 years older and 5 years newer is what you're gonna put in for the search. Right, so you're gonna look at a range from 1970 to 1980, a minimum of 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Now you're gonna leave the top end open so that if it wants to give you a 4-bedroom house or a house that has a 2.5 or 3 baths, that's okay too. You're gonna have to adjust for that, but you don't necessarily say it has to have, or if you're looking for a 3-2, maybe you put in a 2-1 as a minimum. At least it has to have 2 bedrooms or whatever. Anyway, so you put in 5 years older, 5 years newer. And then on the square footage, you put in 300 square feet smaller or 300 square feet bigger. And then on the lot size, you don't have to be quite as precise, but like, let's say it's an average lot, 0.15, 0.16, 0.17. All right. Obviously, you don't want it to be like more than a 1/4 acre lot. Otherwise, you're talking about something drastically different, right? So I just put in a max of like 0.25. Or if it's already a big lot, let's just say it's already 0.2 to 0.25, then maybe I say the max is 0.3 and the smallest is 0.15. But just try to put some parameters around that lot size so that the lot size is generally the same size of lot, not something that's super small or super big. Yeah, those are the main things. So then you're going to click search and it's going to bring up, well, then you're going to go back, and ideally you don't want to go back more than 6 months. So in the listing date, for when things closed, go back 3 months or 6 months. Sometimes you have to go back as much as a year, especially like on acreages or other rural properties. If there haven't been a lot of sales, it might have to go back a year. But you try not to go back more than 6 months, and then see what comes up and start comparing those homes and adjusting the values for the square footage and the room size and all that kind of stuff. And you'll get and if you're not sure, like, look at the pictures, skim through the pictures, and you'll see like the condition of the home. Does it have, marble or granite countertops, and the other house that we're looking at doesn't? What are the finishes like? Is this home like totally tricked out and super nice versus the house you're looking at is outdated or whatever? So you're going to look at some of those differences and be able to tell kind of what the value of the house should be so that you can advise your client how much to offer if it's been one that's been on the market for a long time. So, that's part of the job as well in terms of offering and negotiating. Okay, so here's some good practices on offers. Always call the listing agent. Like, some people will just submit an offer and it just shows up in somebody's email box and they haven't even called the listing agent to let them know that they sent an offer. Like, you're just getting this document and you haven't humanized it. You haven't really you haven't put your buyer's best foot forward. So don't be afraid to call them the listing agent. Give them a call. I call them before I even write the offer. I just say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. listing agent, besides price, what else is important to your seller about this deal? So it might be they need a quick closing, or they want a long closing, or whatever other terms that might be important to the seller. So again, you're kind of ingratiating yourself to this seller by trying to find out what's important to them, because you're trying to create a win-win situation. If we can give the seller some of what they want, right, and then we're going to create a win situation for our clients. That's what we want to do, right? Create a win-win situation. So I call the listing agent, find out what's important to the seller, communicate that to the buyer, put your best foot forward, put in the strongest offer possible. Generally, you're going to try to give, that seller at least 24 hours to respond, if not like a day and a half. Obviously, we're trying not to give them too much time because we want them to decide and not have another offer come in that could compete with ours. But just be thoughtful about that, depending on the seller situation. They might have multiple parties. It might be in a state and they've got to contact a bunch of different people, so they might need more time. Or if it's over a weekend, generally you might say response time might be Monday at noon, so they can respond to you and get you paperwork Monday morning instead of Sunday night. Just try to be thoughtful about when you're actually asking for a response. Any questions about making offers or negotiating contracts? Okay, let's talk about the transaction itself. Number 6, contract to close. Okay, so are all of you basically looking at working solo, or are any of you thinking about joining teams? Anyone?
I'm a solo agent.
Okay.
I started on a team and I switched to solo.
Okay. So I'm going to assume that most of you are probably going to work solo. So I'm just going to talk about, how you would handle the transaction basically by yourself. Once you start getting enough business, then, maybe you hire a TC that maybe charges you like $400 a transaction to take care of all the paperwork and compliance stuff. But starting out, it's really educational and important for you to actually handle your own transactions, and learn how to do that before passing it off to somebody else. But anyway, all right, so basic process is we're going to get that. Once we get mutual acceptance, right, we have agreement, both parties have signed, we are under contract, then some parties got to open escrow. Usually it's the listing agent, all right, but there's no law that it says it has to be the listing agent. So usually if I'm on the buy side, I'm gonna let the listing agent lead a little bit. But you'll get a feel for what kind of agent they are just in your interaction with them. And like recently I had a deal where it was just pretty obvious that the listing agent was not very timely, was not a great communicator. Yeah, I just didn't feel like I was in partnership with another great agent. So I just kind of took it upon myself to make sure that the escrow office had what they needed. And so I went ahead and opened escrow, sent my documents over, and got them my contact information for my clients. and got things rolling. So it just kind of depends on the situation you find yourself in, but like most of the time, you're going to see in the listing sheet where the listing agent wants escrow to be at. They'll list a title company and maybe a title officer. And 99 times out of 100, just go with what they want. All right. Very, very few of your clients are going to have an opinion about where to have escrow held at. Okay. I think I've maybe had that happen once or twice in my 7+ years where I've had an agent or I had a client who actually said, I want to do escrow at such and such a company, and I don't want to do it over there. Most people don't really care. So just do whatever the listing agent wants you to do. Okay, so escrow's open. First couple of things that are going to happen is communicating with your client about them getting their earnest money into the title company. So unless you specify differently, your client has 3 business days to get their earnest money in. Now, generally speaking, they're just going to write a personal check and drive down to the office and hand them the check. They can wire it if they want to, if distance is an issue or travel is an issue or what have you. There's different ways to do it. You can put them in contact with the escrow officer and they can work it out. But basically, you're going to let them know how much and where and when they need to send their money. Okay. You're not don't take the check for them. Don't handle the money. Okay. State does not want us handling any money, but you're just going to help facilitate that. Generally speaking, when you're writing your contracts, earnest money is somewhere around 1% of the purchase price. There's not a law about that. There's no magical number, but it does kind of paint a picture about how strong of a buyer your client is and how serious they are about the property. Because in a sense, it's how much money they're willing to risk. Once we get past the inspection period. So your buyers have 2 safety nets. First safety net is the seller property disclosures. So the other thing that's going to happen right off the bat after you get mutual acceptance is the seller's agent is going to send over the property disclosures. Okay. So those are for both you and your client to review. So I always review, I'm going to review them first, read through them, see if there's anything that stands out to me as potentially problematic. And then I'm going to send them over to my buyer for them to sign off on, right, through DocuSign. So I just say, hey, review these. Let me know if you have any questions. If you do, call me. Don't sign these, until we get your questions answered about the condition of the property, and I let them know if I've seen anything that concerns me or whether it looks like everything's okay. So
I have a question about that. For example, with your experience, what is that really red flag in the property disclosure in order to make that advice to the buyer and said, okay, it's time to get out?
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I mean, you can't, it's anything about the condition, right? So like if they say, okay, yeah, the roof leaked 3 years ago or last year or whatever, but we got it fixed. Well, then I want to see the receipt from the roofing company, and what they did to fix the leak, right? If they just fixed it themselves and there's no documentation, then that's kind of a red flag. It wouldn't necessarily mean don't move forward, but it would be move forward with caution because, in the inspection period, we're going to have our inspector look at it and see whether or not it looks like it's been fixed, or maybe we want to have a roofer look at it and make sure that it's been fixed. So it's, if you have a question like that where something's a little iffy, then I just go ahead and ask the listing agent, say, hey, I see that they had this issue with the roof or the plumbing, or, you know, it could be any matter of things. They had this issue and they said they took care of it, but, you know, we have this question. So it kind of depends on whether you feel like you got satisfactory answers to whatever the issue is that they, you know, say is the condition of the property. It might be something that is not necessarily wrong, but it's just something that, like, maybe there's a shared well. And your client kind of goes, oh, I don't know if I want to share a well. Like, how many gallons per minute is this well pumping? If it's not pumping very much water, but I got to share it with 1, 2, 3 other neighbors, then maybe I don't want to proceed forward with that property. And it's not anybody's fault. It just is what it is, but it's better to see it then on the disclosure and save my client $450 for a home inspection if that's not the kind of situation that they want to be in. So you kind of got to know your client, know what's a problem to them, know something about construction and, you know, that those types of things, and then know what kind of questions to ask the agent to get the information that you might need to make your, to, you know, to help your client make a decision. So you have 5 days, 5 business days to review property disclosures and sign off on those. If, you know, if anything in there, you know, makes it a no, then you just do what's called an unconditional disapproval of the property disclosures, and then your client can get their earnest money back if they've already deposited it. Okay, so that's your first safety net. So then, you know, if you've got property disclosure signed and earnest money's in, now we've got the home inspection scheduled, and we go through the home inspection. So home inspector comes back, gives them a report, gives you a report. You're reading through all of the things that, you know, are, quote, wrong with the house. Here's another opportunity to educate your client, okay? Especially first-time home buyers, because they're going to see all these things that are wrong with the house, and they're either going to want to back out of the deal or they want the seller to fix them all. And neither of those is probably the right choice. Okay. So you kind of have to set expectations up front and be able to say, okay, in today's market, what we're asking for are things that are structural, safety, or health related. You know, so if the smoke alarms are more than 10 years old, if there aren't earthquake straps on the water heater, plumbing and electrical issues, you know, obviously a roof, or there's fungal growth in the attic because there's not adequate ventilation, or I don't know, any other numerous items, but like there's a crack in the sidewalk, or there's, you know, I don't know. So you know, the water, there's water in the crawl space. Okay, yeah, it's Oregon in the wintertime. You just kind of have to be a good gauge of whether or not it's really a significant issue or not. And again, you don't want to pretend like you're the expert. So I'm not saying, you know, pretend like you're the expert, but you just have to negotiate, you know, navigate with your client. You know, what's a problem to one person isn't a problem for another. If you're dealing with an elderly lady who can't fix any of these things in her house and is going to have to pay to have them done, that's one thing. Whereas if you're selling it to somebody else who's a handyman, they might go, oh yeah, I'll just do it myself, no big deal. So you kind of have to know your client, and know what potentially might be a problem to them. So on one hand, you're not trying to schmooze them and get them to buy a house that has a bunch of problems. On the other hand, don't just go along with everything that they say and try and get the seller to fix a bunch of stuff that they're probably not going to say yes to, and then you're going to end up blowing up a deal. Okay, so you just have to talk to your client and be able to say, realistically, in today's market, here's the kinds of repairs that clients are generally getting, that sellers are saying yes to, or not saying yes to. And we can try for these repairs, but just know that this is the second round of negotiations. And if we don't come to an agreement by the inspection period, then the deal blows up and we go back to the drawing board. Okay, so all along the way, you're just giving them kind of like a lawyer would, of just, here's your options, here's the information, to make your choice. And then, just be careful about inserting too much of your own opinion. Okay, try to stay neutral. Again, you're trying to keep your client first, and you're just trying to protect their best interest. All right. So yeah, so you get through repairs, you get repairs negotiated. Maybe it's maybe some repairs are getting done, or maybe in lieu of repairs, we have either a price change, or what's more likely, like let's say there's like $3,000 worth of repairs that they'd like to get done. Seller doesn't want to necessarily have to get all those done. Instead of a price change, ask for $3,000 in closing costs. Okay, it's the same amount of money to the seller, and it's $3,000 back in the pocket of your buyer, rather than saving $3,000 on the price of the house, which is going to be very minimal to their monthly payment. So max out asking for closing costs before you ask for price reduction, because that will have the biggest impact to your buyer. Once you get through that, then is the appraisal. So then you let the lender know, hey, we got repairs negotiated. You can order the appraisal. Appraisal gets ordered. Most of the time it comes back at value. We're basically out of time, so I'm not going to go into all of that. But once you get through appraisal, now you're going to closing, and you're handing them keys, handing them a thank you card and a gift. And then number 7 here, post-close systems. Make sure you're following up with your clients. Like obviously they're going to be moving and it's going to be stressful for a couple of weeks, but maybe 3 to 4 weeks out, you give them a call, check in on them, say, hey, how you doing? How did the move go? Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do? You have any questions? Just do a follow-up like that. And when you do a follow-up like that and they've had a successful move, maybe it's at that point you ask for a referral. Hey, do you know anybody else that I can help? Or you ask them to go online and do a review for you. Okay. I can be found at timothy.english@kw.com. So if you have any questions about anything today, feel free to send me an email and ask your questions. I'd love to help you. Again, timothy.english@kw.com. Thanks for being a great group today, and wish you guys all the best.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.